making sure families, individuals, and businesses have the support needed to recover from COVID-19, and building housing that is affordable for Gresham at every income level. Mayor Stovall has a long history of volunteer local government service, including working with stakeholders on previous urban growth and urban reserve projects. With that, Mayor Stovall, I will give you the floor.
All right, good morning. And again, thank you for the opportunity to come and talk to this incredible group. First and foremost, I just want to say that it is so exciting when I got the chance to speak before Mayor Steve Calloway. I've been in a number of meetings with Mayor Steve Calloway, and he is way more gregarious, way funnier, and I just am I'm stoked that I get to go before him, so I don't have to actually live up to his incredible opportunity to speak publicly. And I also want to say hi to Dave Nielsen. Dave and I have known each other for a number of years. We have worked around and with each other in a different situation than I was in years ago. So hello, Dave. Great to see you. Again, thank you for the opportunity to have this conversation with such an amazing group of individuals. First and foremost, I just want to say that it was just referenced that I won my mayoral race last year. And I'll follow it up by saying that it was an incredible landslide. I don't think there was a race that got won for mayor by any greater number than the 13 votes that I won by. Yes, 13 votes, virtual landslide. If it had been 12, it wouldn't have been a landslide. But at 13, I crushed the competition. So I'm happy to be here. So Gresham, I love the city of Gresham. I've lived in Gresham for 16 years. I've lived on the east side for 21. And I'm from Kansas originally, and I just love the east side, and I love the city of Gresham, as many people know. Let's go to the next slide. So first and foremost, I just want to kind of bring everybody up to speed on a lot of things Gresham. So first and foremost, city of Gresham, we have 112,660 residents, second largest city. We've got an incredible historical downtown. If you haven't been there, please visit it. A lot of folks, when they come there for the first time, and they experience it, they're like, wow, this is Gresham. Yes, this is Gresham. We have a strong manufacturing and distribution sector. We would, of course, like that to be stronger. So we're always looking for brand new opportunities to bring new business to our region. And the interesting thing is the 16 neighborhoods that we have, with each its different character. We've got everything from Civic neighborhood, which is high density. It's actually where I used to live. I don't live there anymore. If many of you can see over my left shoulder, that does happen to be water, and no, the city streets are not flooded. I actually live in a floating home, which has a whole different conversation piece that we won't get into today. But we've got everything from floating homes to high density to luxury housing down in the Persimmon area. So we've got this incredible diversity of neighborhoods. Next slide. And then we move into the community. Gresham is one of the youngest and most diverse communities in Oregon. So that leads to its own challenge. We have 37% of our residents are residents of color. And we've got an interesting dynamic with our council. Our city council now is minority majority, which is a fascinating dynamic when you've got the diversity that we have in our city. And over 29,000 residents are under the age of 20, over 29,000. That if you take just those residents that are under 20, they would be a fairly large city in the state of Oregon. And so we've got interesting interplay between the cross sections and intersections of this diversity, the over 60 languages spoken, the youth. So we've got a tremendous opportunity here as we move forward. Next slide, please. And so from there, we look at housing. And as was referenced in one of my kind of key components that, I talked about when I was in the campaign, and is a foundation of who I am as an individual based on my unique experience. The city maintains a variety of policies and programs and projects that support a wide range of housing, delivering kind of that planning, review and design, technical support, all of those things. We were just talking with a multifamily housing developer the other day, and one of his comments that he appreciates working with the city of Gresham because ultimately, and this isn't to say that you don't find this in other key areas, especially from, I'm sure the other three mayors that are on this call do it phenomenally well. So, but this developer referenced that they enjoy working with the city of Gresham because ultimately, when you're working with one of our teams, we don't just tell you whatever plan you're bringing to us does not work. We tell you what does not work, and then we give you kind of some perspectives as to what we want to see. And since becoming mayor, I've actually sat in on 2 Gresham design committees. And while I can't tell you what it takes to create great design, I can tell you when I'm viewing things that I don't like. And it was just really good to sit in there and understand kind of how our design committee is helping some of the developers, some of the builders create designs in our community that really enhance what we have. Permits, inspections, and then the various services and funding, all the things that many other cities have. Let's go ahead and move to the next slide. All the things that other cities has. And so here in Gresham, we have roughly almost 41,000 number of households, almost 43,000 number of housing units. 54% of those are single units. In Gresham, as we all know, Gresham remains fairly affordable. And that actually creates other potential challenges that we have, but not near as affordable as we continue to need. And as we all know, there's a direct correlation between supply and price. And as supply decreases, prices go up, which is a challenge when we talk about equity. And that's one of the things that I'm truly passionate about, is the opportunity to ensure that we bring equity to these critical conversations. And there's a lot of interplay and intersection, and sometimes collision between things like urban growth boundaries, which I'm supportive of, but we think about that. When we think about that, we tend to don't think about the equity in that regards to that conversation, because once we artificially decrease supply, we push price up. And if any of you have read the book, The Color of Law, written by Richard Rothstein, he talks about the many challenges that people of color have had accessing housing, being able to purchase housing. And as we know, African Americans, people of color in this country, have about 10% of the wealth of the greater majority. So 10% of the wealth, a lot of that is couched and reserved and preserved through real estate and multi-generational ownership of real estate. And so when people of color have not had the opportunity to access that, those become challenges. And so we've got to ensure that we've got a diversity of housing opportunities, from situations that require a lot less dollars to get into home ownership, all the way up through the luxury housing support, including the middle housing conversations that many of us are having today, of course. And I'll drop this one last piece in this section, and as we talk about housing. But ultimately, I grew up in Kansas City, Kansas. Sadly enough, Kansas City tends to rank in the highest top 10 of most dangerous cities in America. And that's sad. And I grew up in the heart of that danger in the inner city of Kansas City, Kansas, in a red line community. And so I had that experience of what that looks like. Crazy thing is my parents still live there within this community. My dad bought the house about 50 years ago. He bought it for about $5,000. Today it's worth $35,000. Yes, a whopping $35,000. And they could sell it, maybe buy a mid-level sedan. They worked hard. They worked 2 and 3 jobs. Both my parents did, worked hard, put their kids through school, did everything they were supposed to do, had the foundational housing in a single housing unit. And today they have roughly, again, about $35,000 to show for that. And so there's a bunch of dynamics that we need to consider as we think about how do we develop our housing plan and how we continue to ensure that we have a diversity of housing and an ample supply of housing, so that equity becomes part of this conversation. Next slide, please. And so as we think about that, we think we need to consider housing development. And we've seen a lot of things come into Gresham. We've got infill, we've got a number of multifamily housing units going in. And when we tend to think about affordable housing, we tend to think multifamily. And that's not always fair. I mean, because ultimately affordable housing needs to be extended into, the single family solutions as well as the multifamily. And so that's a critical thing that as a city, I shouldn't say necessarily as a city, but that's a critical thing that I'm super concerned about as we look at expanding our housing opportunity, our variety, and the diversity. So with that, let's move to that last slide and wrap up in regards to, I just want to say that, from where I sit, I'm passionate, super passionate about making sure that as a city, we're going beyond kind of the standard processes of looking at how we've always done things, super interested about being innovative as we look to solve a perennial challenge with housing, with affordable housing, again, with the diversity of housing, and ensuring that we've got the opportunity for folks to move from poverty to prosperity by leveraging home ownership. And that only happens by working in concert together with everyone at the table, having these critical conversations and understanding how do we best put the best processes, procedures, and opportunities in place for this goal that we're talking about here. So again, I want to thank you and appreciate greatly the opportunity to speak to such an amazing group. And I'm super glad that I got to go in front of the great Mayor Callaway of Hillsborough.
Thank you very much, Mayor Stovall. That was a very thoughtful, fantastic presentation. And I think you're underselling yourself a bit. I think you're putting a little pressure on Steve here.
Oh, yeah, I am.
Next, we have Hillsborough Mayor Steve Callaway. Mayor Callaway was elected as the 50th mayor of Hillsborough in 2016 and previously served on the City Council as well as the Budget Committee, the Hillsborough 2020 Vision Implementation Committee, and the Planning Commission. As a Hillsborough resident since 1995, Mayor Callaway feels it's important to live, shop, and volunteer in the community where he's earning his living. With all that committee and planning commission experience, you certainly have spent your time volunteering with the city. So I'll turn it over to you, Mayor Callaway. We look forward to your presentation today, and thank you for your time here.
Thank you very much. And yeah, Travis is definitely overselling my ability. And, you know, in fact, when we have a tavern here on Main Street, Joe's Tavern, and when I walk in, they lower the bar. So I just want to put things in perspective here. But I also want to acknowledge that my wife grew up in Gresham. And so Gresham does have a very special place in my heart. It was and still is just really a wonderful city. And I'm grateful that they have Mayor Stovall's leadership. So go ahead and go to the next slide. And you can see where Gresham is on the right side, and we are all the way over on the west side of the metro area. We have a little over 100,000 residents, and we have over 40%, a little over 40% who identify as people of color, which makes Hillsborough the most diverse large city in our state. And so along with that, we are a full service city. We have a government dedicated to providing, visionary leadership, delivering responsive municipal services, and fostering collaborative partnerships that enhance our livability. Now, I think that it's our Hillsborough 2020 plan and 2035 plan. It's been great planning that has, helped us achieve, just a level of excellence and livability that we enjoy. And I do want to acknowledge Colin Cooper, who, did, the lion's share of work on the presentation and is our, within our planning department. I also want to acknowledge John Southgate, who was formerly with Hillsborough Economic Development, who is also in the audience. And they are key individuals that have helped with that, with our planning. So we have a great economic base, high quality parks, natural areas, and all of those were taken into account when Money Magazine identified Hillsborough as being the 29th best city to live in the United States. And we were the only city recognized in the Northwest. Now, housing continues to be a top priority for the city of Hillsborough as we plan for further growth and development. And our vision is to provide a range of housing options that will meet various needs and preferences for existing and future residents, and to plan for a complete and balanced community. Our housing strategy is as diverse as our community, and our partners in the building community, we've long understood that our housing strategy needs to provide housing products options to meet the entire market, from multifamily in our centers and transit-oriented districts to affordable housing for families and seniors. And I have two kids, and my son, who's now 30, he and his wife bought their first starter house in Hillsborough this last summer. And I am so happy to have them close by. There's just something wonderful about them being able to take a walk and come over and visit. And, again, the importance of that inventory of housing is even more personally important as my family ages and moves into their adulthood. Now, even though we have a portfolio of well-designed housing, we have identified that in the next 20 years, we're going to need over 16,000 additional housing units in Hillsborough. And that is, to me, just a staggering and stunning number. So as we look forward to these next 20 years, we know that we have Gen Z, millennial, multi-generational households, and folks like myself and my wife who will be downsizing. And that's why having that wide inventory is so critical. Next slide, please. So our target areas. And I think click the slide again because we should, there we go, perfect. So we have, and there's, excellent, that is the full array. So you can see our downtown, Orenco, Amber Glen, South Hillsborough, and Witch Hazel. Those are our target growth areas. And so in 2009, we updated our downtown plan, which led to the successful mixed-use residential development like 4th and Main, which since the day they started taking applications for occupancy, they have had a waiting list. And we anticipate significantly more mixed use and multifamily development in the historic heart of our community. And then in 2010, we adopted the Amber Glen plan, which took a combination of stalled business park and vacant land and created an opportunity for over 5,000 new dwelling units. And the market's already responded with the construction of over 2,000 housing units, including the recently completed Willow Creek apartments that provide 140 affordable housing. 140 affordable housing units, excuse me. And then we have the nationally recognized Orenco station. And there we rezoned land near Max in order to create an opportunity to increase density. And the market responded with the construction of an additional 1,200 dwelling units, including 200 affordable units. And then you see Witch Hazel, which is being planned now. So next slide, please. Excellent. So now we have South Hillsborough, and the city, along with our partners Newland Development, Polish Homes, and Hag Lake LLC, broke ground on South Hillsborough in 2016, which is a 1,200-acre expansion of the UGB, where it's anticipated that at build-out, there'll be approximately 8,000 new units, a town center, a village center, 4 new schools, and several new parks that will have been constructed. And so far, we've issued building permits for over 1,300 dwelling units, and over 900 of those units have received their final certificates of occupancy. And as I walked around South Hillsborough pre-COVID, just to talk to people that have moved in, I talked to a mom who had moved down from Bethany. She has 3 boys. At that point, they were 5, 7, and 9. And she was really excited that it was flat, that there were bike paths, that there were parks. And she said, it's a place that my 3 boys can grow up as boys, and I don't have to worry about them riding bikes on hills, among traffic, or anything like that. And another couple that had moved in waited until their son graduated from high school and then moved from Gresham because the husband worked at Intel and was driving from Gresham to Intel in Hillsborough every day. And the mom said, I got tired of hearing his complaints about his commute. So as soon as our youngest graduated, we moved over to be closer. So those are 2 examples of the people that are moving into South Hillsborough. And they will also be typical, I would imagine, of folks who are going to move into Witch Hazel. And so could we have the next slide? And so our Witch Hazel South, in 2018, our city was successful in adding 150 acres there is in the South Hillsborough area. And we expect another 1,000 units. And we're working with our partners at MLG to plan this area and bring it online as soon as possible. Next slide. So middle housing may be a newer term, but it's not a new idea to Hillsborough, where clear back in the 1960s, our community development code allowed for a variety of products, including duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes. And because of the flexibility going clear back then that we put into our code, 9% of our housing stock in Hillsborough already meets House Bill 2001 definition of middle housing. But we know that more needs to be done in order to provide everybody an opportunity for affordable homes in our community. So as are all mayors and cities, we're actively working on the implementation of House Bill 2001. Next slide. Thank you. And so affordable housing. This is another area our community has prioritized because we recognize the need to increase housing opportunities from workforce housing to deeply affordable housing. Currently, Hillsboro's total regulated housing numbers are second in the region only to Portland, but we know more work's necessary. And so we have worked with REACH and Northwest Housing Alternatives to create over 200 affordable housing units in Orenco. And we have worked with a number of public and private partners to produce 100 affordable housing units at the Willow Creek Max Station. And most recently, with money from the Metro Housing Bond, we have selected a developer to provide approximately 152 family-oriented affordable homes as part of the Metro Bond. We're working with Habitat for Humanity, and we have 18 new dwelling units that have been submitted for their entitlements. And that especially is a project that excites me because as Mayor Stovall mentioned, home ownership is critical to building wealth and providing opportunities for your family. And so we are deeply committed to making sure that we're doing all we can in Hillsboro to help people buy a house. Next slide. And so whether creating mixed use developments like the Platform District at Orenco Station, or a major new neighborhood like South Hillsboro, or welcoming infill development, we work hard on our core services, and we're proud to say that through years of good budgetary choices, we're weathering the COVID pandemic economic hardships without any diminishment of providing core services. And an example of our city's ongoing work to provide core services are our partnerships with Tualatin Valley Water District and the City of Beaverton to build the Willamette Water Supply Pipeline. We have a series of public-private partnerships with developers like Newland and Polish Homes in South Hillsboro, where we've been able to advance construction prior to completion of roads, significantly reducing project costs and avoiding future construction disturbances to new residents while securing a 50-year supply of water for our community. So by bringing in the huge 6-foot water pipes long before it reached us from the south, again, we're able to put that infrastructure and we'll be able to connect it without tearing up roads or without disturbing the South Hillsboro residents. And we made another key infrastructure design recently when we decided that in the 21st century, access to high-speed internet is as fundamental as any other infrastructure service. And we chose to start Highlight, which is a municipal high-speed broadband internet service, which provides a gig of service to the homes, to residents for only $50 a month. And so we have the backbone that's completely laid out throughout our city through partnerships with our school district. And we're really, really excited for that. And I think we've seen during the pandemic and distance learning with kids from learning at home, the importance of having reliable and affordable broadband. And we are also this fall opening up a new community center that will provide additional recreation and community services to our growing population. So in South Hillsboro, where you saw in the previous slides, we have 2 new parks, 2 new on the way, and we have land that we've purchased for a 40-acre community park down in that area, which will eventually be the site of our 3rd community recreational center. Next slide, please. And last, oh, and I'm sorry, I think I got behind. So that's the Orenco and the transit-oriented development. We'll move forward. There you go, thank you. Last slide. So there are many aspects to providing a home and creating community. And one of those is providing something for everyone in the community to cheer about, which is why I want to mention another home, my favorite home, and that's Home Plate. Here we have the Hillsboro Hops, who have been promoted a couple of levels to advanced A, single A. And so we invite you to come out this summer and enjoy a baseball game. Because as Dorothy mentioned, and I'm not sure if it's because she's a baseball fan or if she's a home builder, but like Dorothy said, there's no place like home. So thank you to our home builders for making Hillsboro a home for so many different people. And we're grateful to partner with you and look forward to partnering with you in the future. And with that, I'll turn it back.
Thank you, Mayor Callaway. That was a very nice presentation. And I've got to say, just from personal experience, we've done several projects within the city of Hillsborough, and your staff, the message that you are putting forth is titrating down to them. And you've got a very talented and motivated group of staff members working for you who not only care about moving projects forward, but making sure that they're high quality projects when they move forward. So I congratulate you on putting such a good team together behind you.
Thank you. Could I say one thing that I forgot, and that is Councilor Anthony Martin is also, on here today, and I just want to acknowledge him. He's a great counselor, and I'm very appreciative of him taking the time from his workday to be on this event. So thank you to Councilor Martin.
Well, we thank you both for your service and for joining us today. Now we're going to hear from Wilsonville Mayor Julie Fitzgerald. Mayor Fitzgerald was elected as Wilsonville's 9th mayor in November. Congratulations from all of us. She previously served on the Wilsonville City Council, where her work included chairing the Transit Master Plan Task Force, helping to launch the Citizens Academy, and increasing Wilsonville's future capacity for family wage jobs with the development of the Basalt Creek Area Plan. She is currently Executive Director of the Oregon Zoo Foundation. The floor is yours, Mayor Fitzgerald.
Well, thank you very much. And I really want to say how much I appreciate being able to represent the city of Wilsonville here and to work with, really, I consider that we're working with the home builders. We have so many homes under construction and have for a long time, and really glad to see continued activity. And I also wanted to thank the staff at the city of Wilsonville who helped put together this presentation, and I think continue to strive to do a really good job in interacting with our home builders and our citizens in all of their practices and activities. And I was sworn in January 4th, so here it is March 4th. So it's just been 2 months and there's still a lot to learn. And what I wanted to talk about today is one of the some of the reasons that I think one of Wilsonville's goals is to create a safe, livable community while promoting an active and connected way of life. And I think you'll see that reflected in some of this material that I have today for you. Really looking at Wilsonville's, if we go to the next slide, please, looking at Wilsonville's housing mix, as you can see, we have a really long history of providing a variety of housing. These figures are from 2019. As you can see, we had 45.7% of people living in apartments, 40% in single family housing. We had 7.5% in middle housing, and just about 5% in condominiums, and the remaining 1.3% in mobile homes. So we'll go to the next slide. And just talking about some of our variety, going back to Charbonneau, where we started with a lot of variety of housing when that developed in the 70s all the way through the 90s. And Charbonneau has a lot of different housing types. This shows an area where there are a number of attached homes close to the golf course. And we'll go to the next slide. This is an example of the layout for the Villebois community. That happens to be where I live. My husband and I have lived here since 2014. And I might just say a little bit about other places I've lived. I lived in Southeast Portland, raised my kids there, and also in rural Oregon, down on Southern Oregon coast, where we had a sheep ranch. And so I have a lot of affection for this proximity to the urban areas and to the rural areas, and our transit that we have in Wilsonville to get people back and forth. The planned community of Villebois really has so many different housing types. We now have built out about 85% of the neighborhood. It has a capacity of 2,600 residential units. And we've now built out about 13 of the original 15 housing types that were envisioned. One of the housing types they thought they might do originally was to retrofit the old structure for Dammish Hospital. And that turned out to be not feasible. But one of the unique things in this neighborhood is incorporated into the neighborhood are a number of different housing options for people living with mental health conditions, mental illness, and that's integrated into our community. And we're really proud of that. Going to the next slide. What you're looking at here is really our newest master plan community, Frog Pond. And this photo shows attached homes under construction in Frog Pond. This shows it shows attached homes under construction in the Frog Pond neighborhood. The Frog Pond West is the one that's under construction right now, and it is primarily single family homes. And when we go into the next two sections of Frog Pond, which are east and south, you'll see opportunities for middle housing types that'll open up the door for significant growth for the next 15 to 20 years. And we're looking at 1,500 more households in this area. We can go to the next slide. Accessory dwelling units are also a part of our housing mix. Wilsonville has allowed ADUs for years, and we do waive the SDC fees for ADUs. We currently have about 10 in the city, and we just know that there are 4 additional requests that have been received recently. So these are providing some additional housing opportunities. Next slide. Last June, the city adopted an equitable housing strategic plan, which explored our needs and identified 5 near-term action. This plan and policies will continue to guide us in the next few years to come. And I did just wanted to talk about a couple of other figures related to this that I just looked up that I'm going to add in here. As we look at our equitable housing plan, we did a lot of analysis and found out that about 11% of Wilsonville residents live in subsidized housing. And as of 2018, we had 449 subsidized affordable units in Wilsonville in 12 developments. The majority of these units are reserved for families. 2 developments are reserved for seniors. The subsidies and affordability regulations for these units come from programs such as low-income housing tax credit and the city's tax abatement. So these units serve residents making between 30% and 60% of the area median income. That's probably enough statistics for right now, but our report that we had done with Eco Northwest really gave us a good platform for moving forward with our equitable housing strategic plan. And we have more work to do in the next few months and years to build that out. We'll go to the next slide. Looking at our key housing trends, we know that we're looking to having more middle-aged millennials, a continuing population of older adults, and an increasing number of Latinx households. And we want to be able to reflect that as we go forward. We'll go to the next slide. The equitable housing strategic plan analysis showed us some details about the cost burden facing Wilsonville residents. As you can see, 42% of renters are cost burdened and 27% of homeowners. And increasing opportunities for home ownership is something that is very important to me and to our council as well as we work on developing new housing opportunities and our equitable housing strategic plan. So we'll go to the next slide. Whenever we discuss housing, we do tend to discuss it in relationship to our rich jobs base. We just recently were really excited to learn of a new development coming to Wilsonville that will bring 400 jobs on part of the Xerox campus, and that is Twist Bioscience. And as we think about that and looked at our equitable housing strategy, it really further underscored that we want to make sure that we have a wide variety of housing types for the people who work in Wilsonville. As of 2015, however, you can see that we have a lot of work to do. Only 5% of Wilsonville jobs are held by local residents who live and work here, and about double the number of people commute to Wilsonville than commute out of Wilsonville. We'll go to the next slide. The Equitable Housing Strategic Plan identified 5 short-term actions. First, we want to explore the affordable housing at the city-owned site next to our West Transit Station. We want to incorporate equitable housing in both our middle housing work and master planning of our UGB expansion area known as Frog Pond East and South, as I discussed earlier. We want to continue exploring tax abatement options related to affordable housing. And finally, we want to explore a housing liaison staff position. We'll go to the next slide. As I mentioned earlier, one of the action items that we want to do is incorporate equitable housing into the middle housing project that began just after adoption of House Bill 2001 and the Equitable Housing Strategic Plan. This project will provide new standards and processes for the approval of additional middle housing. One of the key components of this work is our siting and design standards. We want to maintain this feel of walkable neighborhoods with green space. Our housing history has shown that density is not the issue. It's about design. And so we want to focus on quality, not quantity. Our existing housing supply is already quite diverse. We do have a high quality of life on communities design regarding, as I described, keeping trees in the mix, keeping pathways and access to natural areas and other amenities. So we're really looking forward to incorporating those in as we go forward. And next slide. Some of the things that we want from our middle housing project is we want to continue thoughtful, inclusive built environment. We want to comply with House Bill 2001 and meet the unmet housing needs. We want to have impactful housing, impactful public outreach. And what I mean is enough outreach that really gives us meaningful actions to take as we develop this. We want to engage marginalized communities who are often not involved in these policy decisions. One thing that we're doing right now to that regard is we are developing our diversity, equity, and inclusion committee. It's been in kind of the formation stages for a few months, and we're now working on with some citizens on the bylaws, and we'll be recruiting for that committee. So they will play a good role in this. We want to provide a plan for infrastructure to support our middle housing and ensure that the standards we develop are usable. And finally, we want to take a look at parking standards. That's something we hear about from our residents to make sure we do everything we can to minimize parking congestion. We'll go to the next slide. So the city is really, in summary, we're focused on providing middle housing opportunities in current growth areas such as Frog Pond, as well as future growth areas in Frog Pond East and South. Next slide. We'll begin actively planning Frog Pond East and South this year, and our goal is to have it completed by 2022 and incorporate the allowance for additional middle housing into it. We'll go to the next slide. Finally, we're looking at middle housing infill opportunities as well into existing neighborhoods. And I especially want to encourage the Home Builders Association to be engaged in this project and other future efforts to help the city with our planning efforts. You may have also read about our town center planning that's been going on with a lot of community involvement lately. We're planning for additional multifamily in this area in our recently adopted town center plan. It will call for a vibrant mixed-use neighborhood. We see some 2 to 5 story development happening, a modern main street that's integrated with public plazas. And actually, I think I do want you to go to the next slide. This one here, sorry about that. and green spaces and connect this area in Town Center will connect to an I-5 pedestrian bridge that is in planning stages. And that would mean you could walk from the West Station across this beautiful bridge to Town Center, which would be just that, a very vibrant town center that connects to transit and also connects people to the other parts of that part of Wilsonville. We have the exceptional challenge of being bisected by a freeway and a river. So this town center development and I-5 pedestrian bridge are seen as good ways to accomplish a lot of things. And with that, we'll go to the last slide. And I again want to thank you for inviting me and look forward to hearing more. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, thank you so much for that presentation. Wilsonville has a long history of creating some of the most interesting housing developments in the region. And it's amazing what you can drive yourself into if you get off the freeway for a little bit. It seems like they're going to be, the city's going to be in very good hands under your leadership, and we look forward to working with you in the months to come. Our last presenter today is Newburgh Mayor Rick Rogers. Newburgh Mayor Rick Rogers is well known within the community. He was elected in November of 2019, where he will serve his current term through 2022. Mayor Rogers is the executive director of the Newburgh Area Habitat for Humanity and the head coach for the Newburgh High School boys rugby team. I've had the pleasure of appearing before Mayor Rogers, and I can say that there have been some very well-considered decisions over the years that I've seen him in service. So with that, Mayor Rogers, I'll invite you to have the floor.
Andrew, thank you. Thank you so much. Good to see you. And to all the folks out there, all the HBA staff, first off, thank so much. I had the pleasure of meeting Dave Nielsen yesterday. He was kind enough to come out to Newburgh, and we got to chat. A lot of things in common, including a love of baseball. So Mayor Callaway, home base for sure, and go Sox, Dave. So there we go. Otherwise, my fellow mayors, I'm going to do this a little differently as I'm batting cleanup, as it were. And so basically, first off, thank you, my esteemed colleagues. Steve, thank you for the shout out for Habitat for Humanity. As mentioned, I'm the executive director of the affiliate that serves Newburgh, Dayton, Dundee, St. Paul, and Sherwood. And Mayor Stovall, one thing we have in common between Gresham and Newburgh is actually, I believe your interim city manager, David Klein, was actually our interim city manager not too long ago. I should also mention that two of our staff, I believe, are on the call. Our city manager, Dan Weinheimer, who came to us from Colorado just about a year ago, or actually 2 weeks before the COVID shutdown, and our community development director, Doug Rux, who many of you may know from his long service in the area. So Newburgh is a town of 24,000. We're the largest city, or second largest city in Yale County. We're gateway to Oregon wine country. If you hasn't visited us to taste our Pinot Noir, you probably should. We're the home of George Fox University. We're also the home of ADEC, Austin Dental Equipment Company. That's the largest privately held dental equipment company in the country. We're home to a growing medical campus with anchored by Providence, Newburgh. Our population is growing to be significantly more Latino over the last few years. We're up to about 24% now. Recent news in Newburgh that has gotten us excited. The first phase of the Newburgh-Dundee bypass is now in and complete. You can get past the Dundee bottleneck now easily. We're hoping with our current federal delegation that phases 1 and 3 will be completed as well. At least we'll get the money to do so. So the mill property, we have a 200-acre property on the river that's been there for over 100 years. It was shuttered some time ago, and we lost 200 family wage jobs. That roughly 200 acres has now become the part of a riverfront master plan. The property has been purchased and is currently being redeveloped. So if you happen to come by that way, you'll notice that the buildings are being taken down and many of the vehicles have been auctioned off. They were purchased by a company with a sort of somewhat unfortunate name of CDC, the Community Development Corporation, and they have experience doing this kind of brownfield renovation nationwide. The other big area for future housing development for us is the Springbrook area, the Springbrook Master Plan. It's roughly 450 acres within the city limits. There had been an agreement originally with Polish Homes, but additional information came to light, and so that's being revisited at the moment. Other builders that have been active in our community are currently active. JT Smith has a project going on right across from the hospital, and that'll be about 130 units plus some commercial. They're also doing a 45-unit apartment complex to the south of town between the riverfront and our downtown. This is timely for us in that on Monday, our housing needs assessment was accepted by City Council. In this is projecting what our housing needs are likely to be based on population from Portland State through 2041. In essence, what we found was that we'll need about 3,050 units to get us through to 2041 with the expected population. That's about 150 units a year. Currently, we're running at about between 100 and 125 units. But what we found and what we know to be true is that multifamily units are severely lacking. In this projection, they believe that roughly 915 units will need to be multifamily, which is something on the order of 45 units a year. We have not had that result at all in the past. In fact, between 2005 and 2020, 77% of the housing constructed in Newburgh was single family, single lot. We've got to do better, significantly better with multifamily because, again, as was mentioned by others on the presentation, without a housing stock of a variety and range of housing types, we will continue to have stresses on affordability. The housing needs assessment showed that the average median home price in Newburgh is $430,000, and 38% of all households face housing affordability problems. 56% of renters face affordability housing issues. Again, we are a severely rent-burdened community. And as an aside, my family and I have lived here for 21 years now. All the kids went to Newburgh High. And there's one word that at 20 years ago, I never thought that I would utter in relation to Newburgh, and that's gentrification. But I think there is a real threat. We're an appealing community with the amenities that I mentioned. It's manageable. And with this possibility for additional job growth, we hope with the Riverfront Master Plan and the additional housing through the Springbrook Plan, we feel that there will be increased pressure from Metro to Newburgh and our surrounding areas. So again, housing is dramatically important for us for that reason. Then again, as I said, with my day jobs with Habitat for Humanity, and has been the entire time I've lived in Newburgh. And one thing that really noticing, for the last few years, and I mentioned this to Dave when we spoke yesterday, throughout my history with Habitat, I've always approached the sort of moral obligation of decent, safe, and affordable housing and how it's important to communities. But recently, in the last few years, we've seen from our major employers that employee retention is becoming more of a challenge as we've got folks traveling from long distances to work in Newburgh. So the idea of workforcing to do something for people that earn between 80 and 120% of median is hugely important. But now I think we're starting to see allies in that area, particularly from our business owners. And if you could put the slide up, I'll show you my one and only slide, I believe. And if you can see this, all right, and it's going to be hard to read, but again, small community. We've got a small but very dedicated staff, led, particularly in community development, led by Doug Rux. This is Doug and his department's plan for housing. You can't read it, but what I'll tell you is there's 49 items on this list that goes to June of 2025 and on to the future. So it's very clear to all of us that there's no silver bullet to solve the housing affordability or the housing stock problem. So this is the work plan that Doug has devised and the Community Development Department in order to attempt to capture and attack it. So as was mentioned earlier, House Bill 2001 is one of them, ADUs are another, et cetera. We did recently implement a construction excise tax, 1% of permit valuation on all new construction. And thank you to Ezra Hammer with HBA for his input on that. That actually brought to light the idea of delaying SDC payment until the time of drywall inspection, which should allow builders to diminish their carrying costs for that period. We also, again, at the HBA's recommendation, put a sunset clause on our construction excise tax. If we cannot, at least in my opinion, if we cannot show that the money being brought in through that, and we project it'll be something on the order of $300,000 a year, if we cannot show actual affordable units on the ground, then we'll allow it to sunset. So otherwise, in this list of items that began in January of 17, 9 of the items have been completed. So based on that, that's 3 items a year. Again, if we're going to go through all of these, it's going to take us something on the order of 15 years. And the list keeps growing. It doesn't stop. So I'm going to my encouragement here is that anything that builders can do, anything the HBA can do to assist our communities with ideas and means to make the diversity of housing, particularly in a community like Newburgh, then we would certainly absolutely welcome that. So with that, I think that is about what I have at the moment. So thank you.
So thank you so much, Mayor Rogers. We'll now start the question and answer portion of the presentation. We have about 5 minutes left for that. If anyone in the audience has a question, we'd ask to please remain on mute and type your question into the chat box. Staff is monitoring the chat box right now, and will be sharing questions with me as time permits. My first question is for Mayor Stovall. In your opinion, what would you say is the best thing that you could be doing as a city council and mayor to keep the cost of housing in Gresham low?
So that comes with, absolutely comes with the ability to have the availability of supply. And there are a couple of things actually, because that supply is dependent upon some of the code issues that we have, similar to the conversations. So I think this somewhat is specific to Gresham, and our challenge here is a good example is kind of the duplex conversation and how at this point, I believe we could only have a duplex on a single tax lot. And if we were to use, say, a common wall scenario solution that decreases the setbacks, what does that deliver for supply? And how does that increase the availability of supply? So we have to do things from a code perspective that allow for the supply to increase. That also includes having a conversation about the availability of lands in regards to the urban growth boundary. So as a city, as a council, we have to advocate, for those things that are certainly environmental. There are a lot of things going on there. We have to be concerned about that. But at the same time, we have to ensure that we've got that available supply by making sure code and code compliance is there, making sure our policies are conducive to that increase in supply so that we can assist on the demand side and decrease those overall costs.
I really appreciate the thoughtful answer. Thank you so much. I've got another one here. This is for Mayor Callaway. I guess, do you have enough land with the future areas that you're planning? Or are you looking at expanding elsewhere? Are you looking at other state or federal dollars or legislative actions to expand the city even further? Hillsborough seems to be on a growth streak, which just cannot be stopped.
Thank you for asking. And I'm glad that Metro Councilor Rosenthal is on, because I do think, when you think of Hillsborough needing to build 16,000 more units and at the same time needing to remain economically viable for the region, we do need to not only make sure that we're using our existing land well and strategically, but that we are able to expand. We need to make sure that we have our 50-year, reserves, and I think that, well, I'll take away the word think. Hillsborough does have a very good reputation of planning long-term. Certainly the things that I'm able to claim as victories and successes are based on the great decisions that were made going back, clear to the late Shirley Huffman many years ago. So, it is critically important, that we are always, as you understand, looking forward. And as part of that will be additional land.
Look forward to it. Look forward to what's to come. You've done a great job with what you've had so far.
Thank you.
Mayor Fitzgerald, you referenced a couple of slides about the number of people who travel into and out of Wilsonville for work, and it documents a very clear need for more housing. How do you balance the need for more housing with existing community members' concerns about the impacts associated with growth?
Well, that's a really good question. And having lived here for 14 years, I hope I'm right, but I'm sensing a much greater appreciation for that need and willingness to accommodate that need than we've had in past years. So we are doing a lot of community involvement. And as I mentioned in the slide, or in the little talk, as we design, we want to design in trees, trails, and so forth, so that we maintain that livability look while we add more housing. And I think the key is to involve our citizens in hearing the story of how all of this works, and that it takes, we want to have housing for everyone as they go through life stages. So I think it's a matter of continuing to involve people and get a good constructive discussion going.
Right. That's a fantastic response. And involvement really is the key. Knowledge and sharing of what's happening usually helps the situation as projects move forward. Mayor Rogers, so I have sort of two questions for you. First, I think it's fantastic that you've already got such a great team in place who's dedicated to providing great housing within the city, and they're easy to work with. And I congratulate you and the entire city on keeping such a dedicated team together. What I wanted to ask about is the cost of housing. Single family attached in Newburgh is quite high compared to some of the metropolitan cities. And multifamily is certainly one way to add another layer. But I guess, what do you think you could be doing to bring even more diversity to the housing stock and the affordability levels within the city? And you might be on mute. Yep.
Yeah, there we go. Andrew, thank you for the question. I think we too, as with other communities, House Bill 2001, we are looking into the middle housing that's currently winding its way through now. We've really been deficient in that. Attached has just not been built over the last 15 years in Newburgh. As I mentioned, it's been largely single family, single lot. And we have taken some steps thus far to reduce lot sizes. We're trying to get the density levels up. One of the things on the mention, one thing that's somewhat creative, I believe, is that we now have it so that if you annex land into the city of Newburgh, there must be a high density component to that land brought in. This runs a little counter to housing thought in the past, because we tend to like high density closer to the urban center and services. But in this case, the need is so great here that we're looking past that and saying that transit, everybody owns a car seemingly, that would do. Otherwise, I think we've got to continue to look maybe at things like minimum lot sizes. We're going to go through and evaluate our SDCs here in the next month or so to really make sure that the project list, the capital improvement list that's there is accurate and reflective of what we anticipate seeing in the future. We've got an urban renewal district that we're currently working to put into place on the south side of town from downtown towards the river. I hope that'll provide some opportunity for redevelopment. But one of the things we've noticed, even areas where we've overlaid current existing single family homes, we have not seen it redevelop to higher density at all, for whatever reason. So that's an area I think we could explore, and hopefully urban renewal with improved infrastructure will allow that. So, yeah.
Well, I'm again glad to see that the city has a champion for housing. Working as the mayor, we're happy to have you and happy to work with you. So with that, we're just a little over time. So I want to thank Mayor Stovall, Mayor Callaway, Mayor Fitzgerald, and Mayor Rogers for joining us today to talk about such an important subject. Before we leave, I wanted to remind the membership of some upcoming HBA events. You can find some more information about these and register on the HBA's website. We've got our Future Workforce New Opportunities program, Behind the Walls, Builder Forum, and then the Build Right Conference coming up, as well as our golf tournament this summer. I'd like to pass another thank you along to Home Street Bank. Don't forget to use the special promo code provided by Home Street Bank for $20 off the registration for the upcoming virtual Build Right Conference. Look out for an email from HBA staff later today with this promo code, and if you haven't registered yet, click on the link and get yourself registered for Build Right. With that, I again thank all of our distinguished guests and members, and it's been a pleasure being here with you this afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.